Hello everybody, welcome to the extraordinary meeting of the Accounts and Audit Committee on the 23rd of July. Thank you for coming. Just to remind members in the room that we're being broadcast live and filmed for subsequent viewing on Trafford Council's YouTube channel. Attendances, we are not a full house. Does anyone have any apologies from anybody? Mark Foster and of course Councillor Barry Brotherton, who I am vice chairing in his absence. Thank you. Questions from the public. I haven't had any made known to me, so I don't think we have any questions from the public this time.
None have been received.
No, thank you. And moving on, it's a one-item agenda tonight, and we're being asked to consider a revision to the Treasury Management Investment Strategy, a strategy that was approved substantially by our February committee and by the full council in February. And we've got Graham Bentley here, our Head of Financial Management, who's going to introduce the item. And then I think we'll open it up to questions from the committee. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to put the report into some context, I think it's always worth doing that. And I think if I just explain the types of investments the council makes, it now falls into two distinct areas. Firstly, we've got the Treasury investments, which are basically the investments of our cash. On a day-to-day basis, we will look at our bank account, see how much money we've got to play with and invest that, and we make investment returns to the revenue budget, obviously bearing in mind security and liquidity concerns for the council. And we set that investment strategy, as the Chair's just said, in February each year as part of the Treasury strategy. In addition to that, in the last couple of years, we've embarked on another strategy which involves investing, which is what we call our asset investment strategy. That's the investments in commercial property. That's obviously something that we put through our capital programme, not through our Treasury, and we borrow for that. So we borrow to cover those investments. So we've got two investment routes. They are linked only by the extent that we borrow to buy or invest in commercial property. Borrowing is a Treasury management function, so that's the link there. What the purpose of this report is it's a complementary addition to our investment strategy, our Treasury management investment strategy. It's complementary to the asset strategy that we've got. The reason we're doing it is because, and again, I'll take a step back, that the council operates under the Prudential Code, which is a code issued by our accountancy body, SIPFA, which basically provides a framework within which all local authorities must comply with in terms of Treasury strategies and its borrowing strategies. And over the last 2 or 3 years, SIPFA and communities and local government have been getting a little uneasy about the level of borrowing for investments. That's not to say you can't do them, and SIPFA are saying we're not precluding investments like this, like your commercial investments, but we're restricting you borrowing if all you're doing is borrowing to get a cash return. If you borrow for regeneration purpose, that's totally fine. But borrowing solely for an investment return, where there's no regeneration, creation of assets, what they're arguing is you must not borrow somebody else's money to do that. As I just said, they're not precluded us doing such investments, but we can't borrow for them. What we can do is look at our investment strategy for Treasury, where we invest cash, and look to possibly extend that to include certain classes of investments to allow us to do some of these that complement our asset investment strategy. And obviously, through doing that, were we not to do that, there's the potential that certain investments that the council may or may not have identified would obviously not be available to the council, and it would in effect leave us with a further budget gap still to find. So what we're looking at doing is expanding our treasury investment strategy to one, complement our asset investment strategy, and if we've got the cash available, we're looking at secure investments. First things first, looking at, is the investment secure, and trying to understand the risks around that. That's paramount. The second thing is how will we actually do that? So what we're looking at doing is extending the treasury investment strategy such that we can include investments that complement our asset strategy. And we're also looking at extending it to cover investment in green assets. So assets that deliver socially responsible infrastructure. It's just a broadening of that strategy. But what's paramount is we will not invest a pound of money unless there's adequate and sufficient due diligence undertaken to protect the security and liquidity of council funds. And I think what we do in the report is we just obviously set the categories that we've got, the limits that we would place in these types of investments. So for green funds, we're looking at a maximum investment of 5 million for up to 10 years. And for opportunities that support our asset investment strategy, a maximum investment up to 25 million for 5 years. We brought it to the audit committee in advance of the council meeting that's scheduled for later, on the basis that whilst council approve all changes to our investments, treasury management investment strategy, the accounts and audit committee have got the role of, in effect, reviewing those proposals before they come to council. So that's why we're here tonight. So any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Thank you, Graham, and welcome, Geraldine. Questions? Would anyone like to start us off? Are you, Geraldine?
Yeah, thank you very much. So obviously SIPFA are advising against borrowing for these purposes, presumably because it's a higher risk than the other borrowing we do. No, so maybe you could explain why they're advising borrowing against it if there aren't sort of good reasons for not doing it. And the other question was, if we're using our liquid assets on this, does that mean we're going to have less liquid assets available? There should be a disaster or something that requires a lot of money straight away, or will we be able to refinance that? Because we won't be able to refinance this through the SIPFA approved route. Thanks.
I think just addressing both points in order. In terms of where SIPFA are, over the last 2 years, there have been certain tightenings within the Prudential Code. The Prudential Code initially was quite a loose framework that they expected authorities to operate within. SIPFA and CLG are concerned at one thing, and that's just the extent of local authority borrowings. The risk side of things is up to the individual authority to assess on a case-by-case basis. Is the totality of borrowing, and our authorities, and I'm not saying it's Trafford, are actually complying with the Prudential Code. There's some authorities out there, in terms of authorities like Spelthorne, where their activity on commercial investments is what you would call not proportional. They have a gross revenue budget, and I might not get the figures exactly right, of about £10 million. They've spent 350 million acquiring assets to generate investment returns. That's not proportional. So if that asset goes bump, what do they do with their totality, their revenue budget that's supporting the services that they deliver? So it's really just a tightening and trying to control what I would call outliers. So they're not restricting the types of investment. In terms of the liquid assets, what we would have to do is obviously have a look at the cash we've got available. The last thing we want to do is be in a position where we are doing temporary borrowing because we've invested too much cash that we can't get back. And that will be assessed as part of the Treasury strategy.
Is that okay? Are you happy with that? You can always come back. could come back with another question. Councillor Duffield, sorry.
Thank you for that, Graham. Can you just talk just a little bit about how you've set your limits and the maximum durations around that, and how you're comfortable with? What would you have set them higher or lower? How come you came out where you did, and how does that fit with other levels of investment that we might do?
I think in terms of the pooled investment vehicle, we have invested in similar types of funds previously. These are similar to the levels that we've invested in on those funds. The particular one I'm talking about is one called the CCLA Investment Fund, which it basically mirrors the timescales and the amounts we've got for that. In terms of the investments supporting the asset investment strategy, I think if you looked at the size of investments we're making from that fund, it's broadly in line with average levels of investment on that fund. If we set it too low, we wouldn't be in a position to necessarily complement, because it won't be enough.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? No, I think those were my two questions, Graham. Thank you for the reassurance. It's very unusual, I think, to read in an accounts and audit committee report that it would not be in accordance with SIPFA guidance. So thank you for that reassurance. If we haven't got any further questions, committee, can I ask for some assurance? Are we happy to accept the recommendations of this report and send it on to full council? Yep. Okie doke. Well, was the quickest accounts and audit committee meeting I think we've done, but it'll be quicker than next week. Yep, that's it. I don't think we have any other urgent items on the agenda, and they've not been made known to me. And we reconvene for a full meeting on the 29th. Okay, thank you very much.